I spotted the red carpet from half a block away, the banquet hall glowing like it was lit for royalty. 6 months of work sat under my arm in a black project folder. The trucking route overhaul that had saved Apex Freight a fortune. My name was supposed to be on tonight's program. The double doors opened and laughter spilled out. But before I could step in, Lisa, our marketing VP, slid in front of me like a bouncer. "We're at capacity. You can wait outside." I almost laughed. "At capacity? My seat's in there?" Her smile didn't move. "You're just an operations manager, Joe. This is for leadership." Over her shoulder, I saw the round table where my team sat. Every chair full, even Kyle, the intern who'd been here all of 3 weeks. My seat sat empty, but they'd made sure Kyle's wasn't. He grinned at something Marty, our VP of Ops, had said, and Lisa leaned in like she was proud of them both. Last month, Kyle had presented my freight algorithm to the board while Lisa beamed like it was his brainchild. I'd sat in the back row and watched executives clap for an idea I'd spent weekends perfecting. Tonight was the cherry on top, a public erasure with a catered buffet. Lisa tilted her head. "I'm sure you understand. Optics matter." My fingers tightened around the folder. "Optics," I repeated. In the glow from the doorway, I saw Marty laughing with 2 execs, holding court like the hero of the year. Kyle sipped champagne beside him. Every word I could have thrown back at Lisa, about the hours, the fuel savings, the contracts we'd salvaged, burned in my throat, but I swallowed them. Anger wouldn't fix this. Instead, I slid my phone out, thumb hovering over the draft I'd been holding onto for weeks. One tap sent it to the entire exec list, legal, and every client who mattered. Attachments included project files, timestamps, and a breakdown proving exactly whose work had driven Apex's record quarter. Through the glass, I caught the first vibrations. Pockets lit up around the room. Conversations stalled. Marty glanced at his phone, his face draining from pink to chalk. Kyle's smile froze. Lisa's eyes flicked down at her own buzzing purse. I slipped the folder under my arm and stepped back from the light spilling through the doorway. The bass from the sound system thumped behind me, out of sync with the silence that was starting to spread inside. Lisa looked up, mouth opening, but I was already turning away. I didn't need her explanation. I'd just written my own. The night air hit cold against my face as I crossed the sidewalk toward the parking lot. Behind me, the double doors stayed shut. I didn't break stride. The cold night air trailed me down the block, but the buzz from sending that email hadn't faded. It didn't come out of nowhere. I'd been carrying 9 years' worth of reasons to hit send. I'd started at Apex Freight straight out of community college, 22 years old, and ready to prove myself. First couple of years, I did exactly that. I tore apart our outdated scheduling system, rebuilt it from the ground up, and cut delays by 35%. That one change alone saved millions in fuel and kept trucks from sitting idle at depots. Back then, people noticed. The old VP of Ops used to stop by my desk, clap me on the shoulder and say, "Keep this up, Joe. You'll run this place someday." Then he retired, and Marty slid into his chair. Marty was a salesman in an operations job. The kind of guy who could talk his way into a contract, but didn't know the first thing about executing it. He made up for it by taking credit for the work of anyone who did. The first time it happened, I told myself it was a mistake. I'd built a basic AI model to predict weather and traffic delays weeks in advance. I showed him the prototype, proud of the accuracy rates. 2 weeks later, I watched him pitch it to the board like he'd coded it in his garage. When I confronted him, he shrugged. "You developed it on company time. It's Apex's now." HR didn't even pretend to take my side. "You're salaried," the rep told me, flipping through my file. "Anything you create during work hours belongs to the company." That set the pattern. I'd design a tool, a process, or a cost-saving method, and Marty would slap a department initiative label on it. If it flopped, my name came up in the post-mortem. If it succeeded, it was his brainchild. I learned to keep my head down. My dad had drilled into me that hard work got noticed eventually. "Don't make waves, son. Let your results speak for themselves." Problem was, at Apex, the results spoke in Marty's voice. I remember one quarter where I'd found a way to consolidate underloaded freight from 3 routes into 1, saving on fuel, driver hours, and wear on the trucks. It was clean, efficient, and got glowing feedback from dispatch. Marty renamed it the Fleet Optimization Pilot. and rolled it out at the annual strategy meeting without so much as a nod in my direction. The next week, he was in the company newsletter, smiling under a headline about innovative leadership. The few times I hinted at the truth in front of others, I got the same answer. That's just how corporate works. And for a while, I let it go. The paycheck was steady. I had a mortgage and no appetite for starting over. Besides, I told myself, someone up top would eventually figure out who was doing the real work. That illusion cracked when I realized new hires caught on faster than management did. I'd train someone fresh out of school, walk them through one of my systems, and within a month, they'd be using my methods while Marty sold them upstairs as collaborative breakthroughs. It got so bad that the more I improved things, the faster he'd swoop in to put his stamp on it. The resentment built slow, like rust on steel. Every stolen idea, every time I sat in a meeting and heard my own words come out of Marty's mouth, it spread a little further. And I stayed quiet, partly for job security, partly because walking away empty-handed after nearly a decade felt like letting him win. But somewhere along the line, the quiet turned into something else. I started keeping copies, the original project files, the emails with timestamps, the Slack messages where I'd pitched an idea before. It magically became a department initiative. I didn't know what I was going to do with them yet, but I knew I wasn't going to let 9 years of my work vanish in Marty's shadow. That folder under my arm tonight, it wasn't just the last 6 months. It was the proof that I'd been carrying around since the first time HR told me, "It's Apex's now." Proof that when the right moment came, they weren't just going to hear my voice. They were going to see exactly what I'd built for them and how they'd buried it. And after what happened at those doors tonight, that moment had finally started. 6 months ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a laptop, a legal pad, and a fresh pot of coffee, rebuilding the most ambitious project I'd ever touched. Weekends, late nights, every spare minute went into a new cross-country freight mapping system. It shaved 28% off costs, cut delivery times by 40%, and had room to scale. By the time the quarterly review rolled around, I had it polished. Charts, predictive models, case studies from test runs, everything the execs would need to greenlight it. That morning, Marty leaned over my desk like he was doing me a favor. "Tight agenda today. Hand me your slides, I'll work them in." I hesitated. It needs more than 2 minutes on a slide deck. He smiled that politician's smile. "Trust me, Joe, I'll make sure they get the gist." The gist turned into a rushed 2-minute blurb, wedged between budget updates and a new company softball league. He skipped half the data, misquoted the cost savings, and never touched the scalability piece. When the COO asked if it was ready to roll out, Marty shrugged. "Still in the early concept phase, needs refining." That was it. The conversation moved on. Months of work, gone with a shrug. 2 weeks later, I was walking past the break room when I heard applause from the conference area. Kyle, the intern who'd barely figured out our routing software, was at the podium. On the screen behind him, my system, renamed, rebranded, dressed up with a couple of generic infographics. Marty sat in the front row, grinning like a proud uncle. The plaque in Kyle's hand read, "Innovation Award." I didn't even hear what the HR rep said after his name. I was too busy gripping the doorframe, forcing myself not to walk in and start listing file timestamps in front of the whole room. That night, I sat on my couch with 9 years of projects spread out across the coffee table. Every one of them had made Apex money. Everyone had Marty's fingerprints on it by the time leadership saw it. And in exchange, I was still making the same mid-range salary I'd been offered 4 promotions ago. Quitting had crossed my mind before, but walking out with nothing felt like letting them keep all of it. The work, the credit, the narrative. No. If they wanted to keep stealing my ideas, they were going to have to do it from the outside. I opened my laptop and started listing everything worth taking. The mapping overhaul, the AI delay predictor, the fleet consolidation framework. Not the watered-down versions they'd pushed upstairs, but my versions. The ones that actually worked. I'd make them sharper, faster, bulletproof. If Apex thought I was going to disappear quietly, they had no idea what was coming. I didn't touch a line of company code or hardware when I started rebuilding the freight algorithm. Everything was on my own laptop, in my own apartment, on nights and weekends. If Apex ever tried to claim it, I wanted a clean chain of custody. While I coded, I started organizing my insurance policy, a master archive of every project they had stolen, Original files, creation dates, draft versions with my name in the metadata. Emails where I pitched an idea weeks before it magically became Marty's. I even had Slack screenshots and meeting recordings where coworkers backed me up. One night I called Dave, a former sales manager who'd left after Marty took his client retention strategy and fed it to marketing. He didn't hesitate. You get something going, I'm in. Then there was Carla, a lead mechanic from the Phoenix Depot. She'd built a maintenance rotation plan that cut breakdowns in half, but Marty had slapped his name on it and tanked her raise. I'd walk tomorrow, she told me. I started building a roster, not just people who hated Apex, but people who had the skill to build something better. Dispatchers, analysts, client managers, even a couple of long-haul drivers who knew the routes like their own driveways. The problem was money. I wasn't going to ask these people to jump without a net. I needed capital. That's how I ended up sitting across from a private investor in a cafe downtown, running through my pitch deck on a tablet. I didn't just show her the rebuilt algorithm. I showed her profiles of the team I could bring on day one, their work history, their proven cost-saving results. The clients who'd quietly told me they were tired of Apex's one-size-fits-all rigidity. She didn't say much during the presentation, just scrolled and nodded. When I finished, she set the tablet down. 2 weeks, she said. If your numbers check out, we'll fund it. 2 weeks later, I had the wire transfer, enough to lease an office, cover payroll for 6 months, and lock down the tools we'd need to launch. I set up the company under a holding name, kept everything quiet. The office lease was in a building halfway across town from Apex's headquarters. I filed provisional patents on the algorithm and 2 related systems before anyone at Apex even knew they existed. The last piece was clients. I didn't cold call. I reached out to 5 of the biggest accounts I'd personally handled. All of them had grumbled to me at some point about Apex's slow turnaround or lack of customization. I didn't make promises. I showed them what I'd built, what it could do, and how quickly we could implement it without red tape. Every single one signed a letter of intent. By the time I looked up from my desk one Friday night, I had a full team, funding in the bank, patents pending, and millions in future contracts lined up. The plan wasn't just to leave Apex. It was to make sure they felt the absence in every corner of their operations. And I wasn't going to sneak out the back door. When it happened, it was going to be public, loud, impossible to ignore. The night of the awards dinner, I didn't bring the project folder for show. I brought it as a prop to walk in with my head high before lighting the match. Lisa blocked me at the door, her fake smile condescension dripping through every syllable of, "We're at capacity. You can wait outside." I didn't argue. I just reached into my pocket, opened the draft I'd been sitting on for weeks, and hit send. The email had everything. My resignation, 7 more from the people I'd recruited, signed client transfer agreements, patent confirmations, and a press release scheduled to hit every trade outlet at 8 a.m. sharp. Through the glass, I saw the shift start. First one phone lit up, then another. Conversations stuttered, heads turned toward each other, whispering. Marty's color drained as he stared at his screen. Kyle looked like someone had just told him Santa wasn't real. I stepped back from the doorway and walked down the hall without a word. My shoes echoed against the marble floor all the way to the parking garage. I'd almost reached my car when I heard it. Hurried footsteps, heavy breathing. VP Vincent, suit jacket half buttoned, sweat beading on his forehead. "Joe, wait," he panted. "We can fix this. Name your price, bonus, promotion, stock options, whatever it takes." I kept walking. "You think this is about a title?" "It's about—" He stopped himself, searching for the right pitch. "You're valuable here. You've always been valuable." I opened my car door. Not valuable enough to stop them from handing my work to interns. Not valuable enough for a seat at the table. He held up both hands like he could calm me down. "Don't do something you can't undo." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not joining their table, Vincent. I'm building my own." I got in, shut the door, and drove out, leaving him standing in a swirl of exhaust. 20 minutes later, I walked into our new office, still smelling like fresh paint and new carpet. My team was there, already gathered around the long conference table, coffee cups in hand. Dave grinned. Carla slid a box of donuts toward me. "You do it?" she asked. I dropped my phone on the table, screen still glowing with the sent confirmation. "It's done." Cheers went up around the room. I opened my laptop and pulled up the launch checklist. "We've got until 8 a.m. before the press release drops. Contracts get finalized tonight. Onboarding packets go out by morning. By Monday, Apex will realize we're not a rumor. We're their competition. They leaned in, nodding, flipping through their assignments. Nobody here was looking for permission. We were here to move. When I left the office just after midnight, the skyline looked different. Not because the city had changed, but because I finally wasn't staring at it from behind someone else's glass walls. The walkout wasn't the end. It was just the starting gun. That night, my phone lit up with a blocked number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Joe," a clipped voice said. "Robert Hale, chairman of Apex's board." I leaned back in my chair. "Evening, Robert." "I'll get to the point," he said. "What you pulled tonight. Resignation emails, client agreements, patents. This is corporate theft. Our legal team is preparing injunctions as we speak." I almost laughed. "Your legal team? The same one that stamped my algorithm not worth pursuing 6 months ago? I have their email, Robert. You want me to forward it to you, or just copy the press?" Silence then. "You're playing a dangerous game." "No, I'm just playing it better than you expected." He tried a different tack. "We can make this right. Come back. We'll triple your salary, move you into a VP role. Hell, you can run the department." "There's nothing to negotiate," I said flatly. "I'm not for sale." By 8 a.m., our press release went live. Headlines hit every logistics trade site within minutes. I was still nursing my coffee when my phone started blowing up. Texts from former coworkers, LinkedIn connection requests, voicemails from reporters. At 9:30, one alert stood out. Apex Freight VP of Operations resigns to pursue other opportunities. Marty's corporate headshot sat above the headline. I read the article twice, smiling at the part about spending more time with family. Translation: they'd tossed him under the bus before the stock slide got worse. The first client call came before 10. By noon, we had 6 more. Word was out. Our team was faster, cheaper, and actually listened. Apex's name came up in every conversation, usually followed by a laugh or an eye roll. By the time the industry blogs picked up the story, it wasn't just about us leaving. It was about Apex bleeding talent and clients in the same week. They looked like they'd been asleep at the wheel. I didn't gloat, not out loud, but I kept every article, every comment thread, every investor forum post, questioning Apex's leadership. They'd spent years burying my work under someone else's name. Now, my name was the one they couldn't avoid seeing. 6 months later, our office felt like a different world. 27 active clients, 3 of them top-tier national shippers, and our average savings across accounts sat at 31%. The kind of numbers that turned heads. It was a Tuesday when Vincent showed up unannounced. No call, no email, just him in our reception area, holding a leather-bound folder thick enough to choke a paper shredder. "Joe," he said when I stepped out, "we need to talk." I led him into the conference room. He set the folder down like it was gold. "Acquisition offer," he said, "and a role, Chief Innovation Officer. You'd run the entire division." I didn't touch the folder. "You've got my attention on the numbers, not the title." He slid the first page toward me. The figure at the bottom could have bought me a house in every state. Full buyout, retain your whole team. You'd be back where you belong. I looked at him. "You think I belong back under the same roof that pushed me out?" "We've changed," he said quickly. "New recognition programs, innovation councils, idea tracking with direct credit to the creator. Everything you wanted before, implemented." I leaned back in my chair. Funny how all that showed up right after we left. He didn't argue. "Look, Joe, Apex isn't the same without you. We'd rather have you inside the tent than competing across the street." I finally opened the folder, flipping through the pages without slowing down. "I'll review this with my team, but let's be clear, I'm never coming back as an employee." His jaw tightened. "You'd have authority." "I'd have a leash," I said, "and I cut mine 6 months ago." Vincent exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Then I guess we'll have to compete." I stood, sliding the folder back across the table. "You've been competing since the night you locked me out of my own seat." He stared at me for a long moment, then gathered his papers and left without another word. As the door shut, I could feel the eyes of my team through the glass wall. They didn't need to ask what I'd decided. They already knew. 1 year later, I stood backstage at the biggest freight and logistics conference in the country, mic clipped to my jacket, watching the crowd settle. Rows of faces, industry leaders, major clients, reporters, filled the hall. From my spot in the wings, I spotted them. Three familiar Apex execs, seated together in the fourth row. Their posture was stiff, their attention locked on the stage. This time, they weren't ignoring me. The moderator's voice echoed over the speakers. Please welcome our keynote speaker, founder and CEO of Horizon Freight Systems, Joe Carter. Applause rose as I walked out. I didn't look at the screen behind me or the cameras flashing in the aisles. I looked straight at that fourth row. You can wait outside. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. I let it hang for a beat before continuing. That's what I was told at a company dinner, right before I realized I'd been waiting for recognition that was never coming. That night, I decided to stop asking for a seat at someone else's table. I told them about the power of valuing ideas where they start, about building systems that reward the person who creates, not just the person who presents. I talked about the cost of letting good talent walk, because you couldn't be bothered to give credit where it was due. I didn't name Apex, I didn't have to. The people who needed to recognize themselves already had. Near the end, I stepped forward, scanning the crowd. The most powerful seat isn't the one they save for you, I said. It's the one you build yourself. The applause was loud and long. I left the stage without looking back.